You've got mail.
What up? Marsh, Mailbag. We were recording this on a Thursday night. SimWorld U games in the rearview mirror as our SimWorld prep. We're not here for a podcast. We're here for a little new installment. We're calling the Marsh Mailbag. We appreciate all the questions that have been coming in. This is a new little piece we're going to be running on Fridays. We'll try to include somewhere in the thread there both the email address, which is marsh@simworldsports.com, and of course the Google Forms. Feel free to put your question in either of those. Opportunity to just go through. We could talk hoops. We could talk, I don't know. I've been reading some books. Reading a book right now, Demon of Unrest. It's a great book that talks about the start of the Civil War, and particularly a fort in South Carolina, in Charleston, that was pretty pivotal to that beginning of the Civil War, beyond obviously all the major ramifications that surrounded our country. So, look, if there's a book that you're reading that you want, let's ask about. I mean, this is a fun space, right? We're all friends here, I hope, except I don't think Drayton or Drees like me too much, but that's okay. I'm not bothered by that at all, he says, through clenched teeth and tears. But yeah, no, this is just a space for us to ask questions, have a little fun. SimWorld, otherwise, let's just do it. So we want to have these on Friday, every Friday as best we can. So send in your questions. Appreciate those that have. We're kind of bringing this thing back to life, resuscitating it, if you will, from a previous iteration that clearly didn't have legs. So we're getting its legs back underneath it. Too long of an intro. Let's dive into this thing. Okay, so first off, shout out Kai Killen's question coming in. Now that Alabama has risen to the number one seed in the SEC and number one in the SP, what are your thoughts on their next stretch of games before Hoopsteria? How has the roster looked without Aiden Weaver? Did they regress in three-point shooting, or are they better off without it? Well, I would start by saying this. No team's better off without three-point shooting in today's basketball universe. Their stretch of games: Mississippi State, Kentucky, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. That's not an easy stretch ahead for Alabama. I think it would be foolhardy to think that they go unblemished the rest of the way. I think it'll be interesting for the SP Top 25 on where do they put them if they were to lose a game. Because you look at Duke, they have the Florida State loss. That's not a good one on their resume. That's a big reason why they're where they are. They have the Miami loss, which isn't a great one on their resume, but it's looking better than it was. But judging by the schedule ahead for Alabama, I think there's a very real possibility, especially if they lose one of these first three to Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Arkansas. I think there's a real case for them to stay at number one despite a loss, because I don't think we should get into the habit of saying, well, a team was at a spot and they lost and they're less than that now. Just because you lose does not mean you're suddenly less than the team below you, right? We need to reevaluate based off who you are currently up against, who are you currently standing next to. If you think that in a vacuum, Alabama is better than Duke, one loss to a good basketball team should not change that. So I would be interested to see if they lose. I do not, though, think they're going to go unblemished. I think somewhere in those next three they slip up. On the road at Mississippi State, at home against Kentucky, at Arkansas. You've got the Auburn game, which is a tough one, a rivalry matchup. Florida's been good. I think there's one game they're going to be favored in all of them. I think that's first and foremost. They're going to be favored in every single one of the games. They should be, at least. But there's only one game that I look at, and it's like a guaranteed, I'm shocked if they lose it, and that's Georgia, because Florida and Auburn have been playing good basketball. So I think they should stay at number one regardless if they lose. If they lose twice, obviously it's a different conversation. The roster, I think they've looked pretty good overall, and the reason this team's been so good all season, pre and post Aiden Weaver, is they just have a lot of guys. I mean, it's not a great three-point shooting team in terms of, like, do they have, you know, the two guys that you just trust unquestionably? Aiden Weaver was that guy. But for them, it's been an offense of multiple options between Dwayne Epps, DJ Childs, who still has not turned things around. I think that's a major question mark heading into next season, and Quincy Henderson. Those are three really good action guys. The two guys that are going to get drafted this season, I think Quincy Henderson's got a chance to go kind of far up in the draft, but I think that it has certainly hurt them to not have a three-point shooter, because that is the major reason. They have no one else on this roster that's made more than 23 pointers. No one has hit 23 pointers with the absence of Aiden Weaver. That's going to be the downfall of this team come Hoopsteria. Do they have somebody that can score for them outside of the paint? They have not found that since Aiden Weaver left. I think that is a very big question mark for this team, and it certainly caps their ceiling. Their ceiling is extended because their defense is awesome, and they get into the paint at a really effective rate. You don't shoot 50% from the floor overall, and not have a good three-point shooting team and be bad inside the paint. That's not how math works. This team is great at getting inside the paint and scoring inside the paint. They've got to continue that in Hoopsteria. Okay, next one up. This one is unfortunately immediately outdated, but it's coming in from our guy Cyrus Jackson. Does Texas Tech have a chance at climbing back into Big 12 contention for the conference despite their head-to-head loss from Dayton? Well, their chances took a major hit when they lost tonight to Kansas State. That's truthfully why they're pretty much out of it. But it's not impossible for them to get back in. It's just going to be really, really hard. And it's at this point, it's not even the loss to Texas, to Dayton that ends them. It's the fact that their head-to-head losses are to Dayton, to Kansas State, and to Kansas. That's the teams ahead of them, and they play Texas on April 24th. They beat Texas back in February, but the problem is that you now don't have the head-to-head against Dayton, you don't have the head-to-head against Kansas State, and you don't have the head-to-head against Kansas, though Kansas is probably going to stay up at number 1. So for Texas Tech, truthfully, it's the loss lately, today, Thursday night, that does them in. Dayton, Kansas State, both very much in it. We probably have too many games to really do like a if this then that scenario. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games left for Texas Tech. I mean, so many things can change on one night, right? The entire conference is in action, and then boom, everything's over, and it's completely different from what it was yesterday. It's why the SEC, it's like you can't make a decision on the SEC right now because there's so much chaos that could happen from 1 to probably at this point 5. But keep in mind, last week it was 1 through 6, right? So it's too early to really say we've got a clear picture on this, but I think it's just going to be really hard for Texas Tech to jump 3 of the 4 teams in front of them to get into the top 2, not having the head-to-head against Kansas State and Dayton. I just don't see that being a possibility, unfortunately, for Texas Tech. All right, what do you think about Louisville being the new best team in the ACC and what they're? Well, let's pause on that. They're not the best team in the ACC. Louisville, they have tied the best record. We got 4 teams at 7-2, which is entertaining, but it's still Duke. I think that there's a very real case for Louisville at number 2 behind Virginia Tech. Regardless of that loss, I continue to be skeptical of Virginia Tech at 20-4. I am not skeptical of Rick when he says this team is going to lose in the first round. They're going to be a 2 seed. They're currently projected to be a 2 seed. They're not going to lose to a 15 seed. Okay? Look, you can never say never. We've seen that happen before, but they are a really good basketball team that just has a capped ceiling. Virginia Tech. That's not the question that we're talking about Louisville. I don't think they're the best team in the ACC, even if they had the best record in the ACC. I don't think we're walking around. Let's see if there's any conferences. Not really. I mean, pretty much all the conferences have the right team on top in terms of rankings. So that would be, if they were sitting there, they would not be the best team. But I think their chances are pretty good to be able to win a conference championship game, because I think they're going to find a way to survive against Virginia Tech in terms of just getting past them and ending up as the 2 seed. I mean, the run that Miami is on right now is absolutely fantastic. But I am just concerned that the wheels eventually fall off on it. There's big tests ahead. I mean, Louisville beat Virginia Tech earlier in the season, so they have the head-to-head there, and they're going to play them again on March 26th. So technically, right now, Louisville is the number 2 team in the ACC behind Duke, and of course, they don't even have the head-to-head to Duke. Of course, we're looking at the date that was sent on the 17th, and Duke and Louisville played on the 18th. So, Cyrus, I apologize. Both of the questions you sent in immediately aged like milk. All right, our last one. Is Kentucky a potential number 1 seed after Texas's loss? No, not right now. They got a really good case, and I made this. We'll update the projections for the rankings as often as we can. I don't know that it's a weekly update, but it'll be a routine update as we have another month and a half of regular season. Kentucky is just on the outside edge of being a number 1 seed, but this is my opinion. It's not up to me to choose everybody that gets into Hoopsteria and their seeding. I am not the gatekeeper of that. But when you look at the notable wins, they just don't have notable wins that match up with the teams ahead of them. So Kentucky, their notable wins are Arkansas, UConn, UCLA, Davidson, Mississippi State. They don't beat the teams in the top 10. Duke has beat Alabama. Texas has beat Kentucky. Villanova has beat, I thought they had one, but I'm not seeing one. So I guess you can make the case against Villanova, but Villanova's not losing. Alabama has beat Kentucky. So if there was a spot to pass, and I think I said this last week, it's against Villanova, who just doesn't have the high-end top 10 notable win on their resume. But until Villanova proves to not be Villanova, which they haven't been, that's really the only way that they can get into a number 1 spot, and I just don't see that happening. All right, that's the mailbag. We're coming back again next Friday, so drop in the questions, Marsh at SimWorldSports.com. Or you can put them into the Google form, which our friend Kai Killens was so gracious to put into the feed last week. If you want to revisit that one, or I will do my best to get it into the feed here once this drops. So appreciate all the questions. We'll get back to you next Friday here on SimWorld TV networks. I guess we're not really on SimWorld TV. Wow, this is a great close. Wow, I am nailing the open and closing today. Let's just get this thing over with. We'll talk to you.